Welcome back, deep divers. Ready to explore some more fascinating territory today?
Always.
Awesome. Well, today we're going deep into the world of enlightenment and presence with Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now as our guide.
Oh, that's a good one.
It really is. We're going to be tackling some big questions like, is the human mind actually an addiction?
Oh, okay.
Can we ever truly escape that feeling of being trapped in time? And is it possible that we're actually the ones creating our own suffering?
I like where this is going. Those are all things that Tolle really gets into. He kind of flips the script on how we usually think about the mind, you know?
Right.
Like we tend to see it as this amazing tool, and it is, but he argues that it can also block us from experiencing our true nature.
It's almost like we're so busy thinking that we forget to just be.
Exactly, and that's where all that suffering comes in, when we're disconnected from that inner peace, that wholeness that we all crave.
That reminds me of that analogy you use, is the one with the beggar sitting on a treasure chest.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
He's so focused on finding scraps outside that he doesn't even realize he's sitting on a fortune.
And isn't that just like us sometimes?
Totally. It really makes you stop and wonder, what treasures might we be overlooking in our own lives because our minds are fixated elsewhere?
It's a good question to ask ourselves. And to understand it a bit more, we need to look at Tolle's concept of the ego.
Okay, yeah. The ego. It's a big one.
It is. And Tolle describes it as this kind of false self that our minds create.
So it's not who we really are. It's more like a role we're playing.
Yeah, like a character we've created. And this character, it thrives on fear. And it needs to maintain a sense of separation.
Separation from what?
Separation from others. From our true selves, even from the present moment.
Oh, I see. So it's not that the ego is inherently bad. It's just that it's playing a role that's become a little too dominant.
That's a great way to put it.
Like a stage actor who's forgotten that they're not actually the character they're playing.
Perfect analogy. Because you see, the ego wants to keep us feeling small and separate.
Why is that?
Because that's how it survives. Think about it. If we all realize that we're interconnected, that we all have this inner treasure Tolle talks about,
Right.
well, the ego would lose its grip.
It would sort of dissolve.
Yeah. And to avoid that, it keeps us trapped in a time warp.
Oh, yeah. That feeling of being stuck.
Obsessed with the past, anxious about the future, anything to keep us from experiencing the present moment.
Which is pretty ironic when you think about it. The present moment is all we really have.
It is. And yet, we spend so much energy on things that have already happened or might never happen.
Like that quote, worrying is like paying interest on a debt you may never owe.
That's so true. We miss out on the beauty of what is right now because we're so caught up in our heads.
Exactly. And that's where Tolle's central message comes in, right? The power of now. It's the key to ending suffering, to finding true peace.
He gives us all these practical tools for getting there, too.
I love that. Less abstract philosophy, more actionable advice. What are some of those tools? Like, how do we actually access this power of now?
Well, he talks a lot about mindful breathing. And it's not just about, breathing to survive.
Yeah.
It's about really paying attention to each inhale and exhale.
So we're using our breath to anchor ourselves in the present.
Exactly. Creating a space between us and that constant stream of thoughts. Do you want to, maybe we could even try it.
Sure, why not? Give our listeners a little taste of presence.
Okay, great. So if you're listening and you feel comfortable, gently close your eyes. Bring your attention to your breath.
Okay.
Notice the rise and fall of your chest, the coolness of the air as you inhale, and the warmth as you exhale. Don't try to change your breath in any way, just observe it. And even if your mind wanders, which it probably will, just gently guide your attention back to the sensation of breathing.
After a few moments of silence.
Yeah.
Wow, that was really grounding. I don't know why I don't do that more often.
It's amazing how something so simple can have such a powerful effect.
It really is. Like hitting the pause button on all that mental chatter.
Exactly. And that's the key, creating these moments of stillness where we can connect with that peace that's always there inside of us.
So it's not about emptying our minds completely. It's more about becoming the observer of our thoughts.
Yeah, watching them without getting swept away.
And that's where another interesting concept comes in, right? Tolle's idea of the pain body. It's like this accumulation of old emotional pain that we carry around.
Ooh, yeah, the pain body. It's a big one.
It is. Can you give us a clearer picture of what it actually looks like in our lives? Like, how does it operate, on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So imagine you're just going about your day.
Okay.
And suddenly you get triggered.
Like someone cuts me off in traffic.
Yeah, exactly. Or your boss makes a snarky comment, something like that. And instead of just feeling like a momentary flash of anger or frustration,
Right.
You get hit with this wave of intense emotion.
Like it's way out of proportion to what actually happened.
Exactly. That's the pain body rearing its head.
So it's not just me overreacting. There's like a whole other force at play.
Yeah. And a lot of times we don't even realize it's there.
That's kind of unsettling.
I know. It can be. But here's the good news. Once you become aware of the pain body, you can start to disarm it.
How do we do that?
Tolle gives us a method. And the first part is becoming conscious of its presence. Like, okay, this is my pain body talking.
Okay.
The second part is accepting it without judgment. And then the third part is simply observing it.
Observing it.
Yeah, without getting all caught up and identified with it.
So instead of trying to fight it or push it away, we're almost creating some space around it. Like we're becoming a curious observer rather than getting caught up in the drama.
That's exactly it. It's a process of disidentification. You start to realize, I am not this pain.
Right.
I am the awareness that is witnessing this pain.
And that shift in perspective can be pretty powerful.
It is. It's incredibly liberating.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
This is deep stuff. But it's so important to understand because, if we're unconsciously ruled by our pain body, it's going to affect every area of our lives.
100%.
Especially our relationships. And Tolle has some really interesting things to say about how these egoic patterns play out in, love and connection. We'll have to dive into that more next time.
Definitely. There's a lot to unpack there.
But for now, let's just sit with what we've explored today. Okay, so before the break, we were talking about relationships, how the ego and the pain body can really mess things up. Where does Tolle go with that?
Yeah, he really dives into how these patterns we've been talking about, they show up so clearly in our relationships. And he makes a really important point about true love.
Okay, I'm listening.
He says it's not about trying to change our partners or fix them.
Oh, yeah. It's so easy to fall into that trap.
It is, and Tolle says that's the ego talking.
Okay.
True love, he says, is about acceptance. Seeing our partners for who they truly are, with all their quirks and imperfections.
So it's like learning to love the whole package.
Exactly. And it's not always easy.
I mean, we all have those moments where we wish our partners would just, change this one little thing. Like maybe they could be a little tidier or a little more on time.
Totally. But that's where that deeper work comes in, the stuff we were talking about before.
Oh, yeah. Becoming aware of our own ego patterns and pain bodies.
Exactly. Because when we're coming from that place of wanting to control or fix our partners, well, that's not really love, is it?
It's more like, I don't know, trying to fit them into some mold that we've created in our minds.
Right. And that's where a lot of conflict comes from in relationships.
So how do we shift out of that pattern? How do we move from that place of wanting to control to a place of genuine acceptance?
Well, it starts with understanding what Tolle means by acceptance.
Okay.
It's not about passive resignation. It's not about pretending everything's perfect.
So it's not like just putting up with things we don't like.
Nope.
What is it then?
It's about recognizing what is and choosing to engage with it from a place of presence and awareness.
So it's like seeing the situation clearly without judgment and then choosing how we want to respond.
You got it. And that's a really powerful shift because when we bring that kind of presence to our relationships,
what happens?
It changes the whole dynamic. We're no longer reacting from our pain body or trying to control the other person.
So we can finally just be with them as they are.
Yes. And that's when true connection can happen.
This is making me think about what Tolle says about the illusion of separation.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
He talks about how the ego creates this sense of separateness between us. But at a deeper level, we're all interconnected.
Exactly. And that realization can be so profound, especially in relationships.
I can see that. Like, if you start to see your partner as an extension of yourself, another part of the same, divine energy, it changes everything. It's like you're seeing a reflection of yourself.
And that can be healing, can it?
Yeah. It kind of softens those edges of judgment and separation that can cause so much conflict.
It's like you're recognizing the shared humanity that connects us all.
Okay, so we've talked about the ego, the pain body, acceptance, the illusion of separation.
It's a lot.
It is. It's making me wonder about something else Tolle touches on. This idea that women might actually be closer to enlightenment than men.
Yeah.
Now, that's a controversial statement. Tell me, why does he believe that?
He talks about how women are often more in touch with their bodies and emotions.
Okay.
And he says those are actually closer to being than the mind.
Interesting. So it's like women are naturally more embodied.
In a way, yeah. And he also highlights these feminine qualities like surrender, openness, acceptance.
Right.
And those qualities are like essential for spiritual awakening.
So it's not that men can't be enlightened, it's just that.
It might be a bit more of an uphill battle.
Yeah. But it's not just about individual women and men, is it?
You're right. Tolle goes even further. He talks about this collective female pain body.
Oh, right. We were talking about that before the break.
It's this accumulation of pain from, generations of oppression and suffering that women have experienced.
Wow. Heavy stuff.
It is. And he argues that this collective pain body is actually impacting all of us, men and women.
So it's like a wound that's affecting the whole planet.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And he believes that women have a really important role to play in healing this wound.
Okay, how so?
He sees women as having this unique capacity for compassion and empathy.
Right.
Qualities that are essential for, raising the consciousness of humanity.
So it's almost like a ripple effect.
Mm.
As more women awaken to their true nature, that energy starts to transform the collective.
Exactly. It's inspiring, isn't it? It gives us hope for the future.
It does. But it also makes me think about something else Tolle talks about. The idea that humanity isn't actually at the pinnacle of its development.
What do you mean?
He suggests there are even more advanced stages of evolution waiting to be unlocked. It's kind of mind-blowing.
You're right. He echoes what some other really interesting thinkers have said, too.
Like who?
Like Michael Murphy, who co-founded the Esalen Institute.
Oh, right. I've heard of that place.
Murphy believes that as we progress spiritually, we start to tap into these incredible capacities.
Okay, like what?
Heightened intuition, really deep connection, and an awareness that goes way beyond what we can even imagine right now.
So almost superhuman abilities.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's not just coming from these spiritual teachers.
Oh, really?
Cutting-edge physics is actually starting to support the idea of a multidimensional reality, too.
You're kidding.
I know, it's wild. Think about the work of quantum theorists like Jack Sarfati.
Okay.
They're exploring things like superluminal travel.
What's that?
It's where particles move faster than the speed of light.
Oh, wow.
And to explain it, they're having to posit the existence of other dimensions beyond what we can currently perceive. So Tolle's ideas are actually aligning with some pretty radical scientific thinking.
I love that. It makes you realize we're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really appreciate about Tolle's work is how he emphasizes direct experience.
Oh, yeah. It's not just about intellectually understanding these concepts.
Right. It's about actually embodying them, living them.
Yeah. And that's where those practical techniques come in, right?
Yeah. Like becoming aware of our breath, really paying attention to even the simplest acts in our daily lives, noticing the sensations in our bodies.
It's like waking up from a dream, seeing reality with fresh eyes.
Exactly. But it's not always easy, is it?
No. It can be really challenging. There's often so much resistance. A part of me wants to cling to those old ways of thinking, even when I know they're not serving me.
I feel that. And Tolle talks about that too, the resistance that comes up.
What does he say about it?
He says the ego is going to fight to hold on.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, when you shine a light into a dark room, the cockroaches all scatter.
That's a great analogy.
Right. And that's what happens when we start to challenge those ingrained patterns.
So what can we do about it? How do we move past that resistance and really step into this power of now? So how do we deal with that resistance? How do we, move beyond the ego's whispers and actually step into the power of the now?
Tolle talks about how in every single moment we have a choice.
Okay.
We can either, choose to stay lost in our thoughts, all caught up in our anxieties and worries.
Right.
Or we can choose to become present, to fully inhabit our bodies, to really experience, the richness and aliveness of this moment.
And that's where the freedom is.
Exactly. He says that choice, that's the key to unlocking a level of joy and freedom that our egoic minds can't even comprehend.
That's so powerful. It makes me realize how much we get in our own way.
Oh, yeah.
We're like masters of self-sabotage.
It's true. And Tolle, he really gets into how our minds play these tricks on us,
Yeah, totally.
He talks about how we resist the present moment by, constantly longing for a better future or replaying the pain of the past over and over.
It's like we're addicted to our own suffering.
We kind of are. We get lost in these mental stories, trapped in these cycles of judgment and negativity, and all of that, it just keeps us disconnected from the aliveness that's available to us right now in this moment.
Okay, so how do we break free?
Well, he talks about recognizing that we have those three choices.
Right. The ones we were talking about before.
Yeah. We can change it. We can remove ourselves from it.
Yeah.
Or we can accept it.
And acceptance doesn't mean giving up, right?
No, absolutely not. It's not about being passive. It's about recognizing what is and then choosing to engage with it from a place of, presence and power.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
It's about, surrendering to the flow of life rather than fighting against it.
It reminds me of that analogy he uses about being stuck in the mud.
Oh, yeah.
The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. But if you just surrender, you actually become more buoyant and you can free yourself.
Exactly. And it's the same with life,
Yeah, I can see that. Like
Yeah.
when we try to force things to go a certain way, we just create more resistance.
It's like we're creating our own quicksand.
Exactly. But when we shift from that place of resistance to a place of surrender, things just seem to flow so much more effortlessly.
They do. And it's not that we become passive.
Right.
It's that we're aligning ourselves with like a greater intelligence, a wisdom that goes beyond our little minds.
So it's about trusting that we're being guided, even when we can't see the bigger picture.
Exactly. Letting go of the illusion that we're in control of everything.
And opening up to the possibility that there's, something bigger at play.
Yeah. Something that's orchestrating things in ways we can't even begin to imagine.
That could be a really comforting thought, especially when we're dealing with difficult emotions, like grief or anger, fear.
Yeah, we want to push those feelings away, pretend they're not there.
But Tolle says we actually need to move towards them.
He talks about like bringing the light of consciousness into the darkness of our pain, not wallowing in it, but creating space for it.
So allowing ourselves to feel those feelings fully, without judgment or resistance.
Exactly. And that's where mindfulness comes in, paying attention to our breath, connecting with our bodies, noticing the thoughts and emotions that come up without getting all caught up in the story.
It's like instead of being in the drama, we become the audience.
Yes. And that changes everything because it allows us to tap into this deeper sense of peace and equanimity.
Even when things are tough.
Even when things are really tough. Because you see, those difficult emotions, they're not inherently bad.
Right.
They're just energy moving through us.
Okay.
And when we learn to just observe them without judgment, they often lose their grip on us.
This whole conversation is making me rethink my definition of happiness.
How so?
It's like we're always trying to achieve it, get what we want, have things go our way. But Tolle suggests that true peace, it transcends all of that.
He does. Because the kind of happiness we're usually chasing, it's fleeting.
Yeah.
It depends on external factors.
Okay, yeah.
But the kind of peace that Tolle is talking about, it's a state of being. It's available to us no matter what's happening in our lives.
That's such a beautiful idea. But I also think it's where a lot of people get tripped up.
Why is that?
Because what about when really terrible things happen? Like, how do we find peace in the midst of tragedy or loss?
That's the ultimate challenge, isn't it? And Tolle doesn't try to sugarcoat it. He acknowledges that pain and suffering, they're part of life. But he also points to this deeper truth.
Okay.
He says that even in those dark moments, there's a presence within us, a stillness, a sacred space that remains untouched.
So it's like there's this wellspring of peace inside each of us that's always available.
Exactly. And that's the power of the present moment. It's always there, offering us a place of refuge.
A connection to something bigger than ourselves.
And when we tap into that, we discover a strength and resilience we didn't even know we had.
It's almost like a superpower.
It kind of is.
And it makes me think about that point he makes about how this inner transformation, the shift into presence, it's not just about personal enlightenment.
Right.
It actually affects everyone around us.
He believes that as more and more of us awaken to this deeper reality, we're going to see a shift in our collective consciousness.
Oh, wow.
A movement towards a more peaceful, compassionate world.
So we all have a part to play in creating that world.
Yes. It's not just about our own individual journey.
It's about contributing to something much bigger.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to, keep exploring these ideas, to keep practicing presence, to keep sharing this wisdom. Because the more of us who embody this way of being,
the more we create a world that reflects those values.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up this deep dive.
I agree.
If the world is a reflection of our consciousness, what kind of world are you creating?
It's a good question for all of us to ask ourselves.
It really is. And if you're intrigued by these ideas, we encourage you to explore Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now further and see how you can bring these teachings into your own life. Until next time, fellow deep divers, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving into the depths of your own being.